A thin, on-rails adventure lacking real depth. The Last Case of John Morley is a decent but flawed mystery game that puts its story front and center, even if that's to the detriment of a proper detective puzzler. For better or worse, this is very much an on-rails mystery game, for better or worse. It's pretty difficult to trip up with this one, and with the exception of a few exploration segments, this is very much a simple and largely forgettable narrative-driven experience. The story whisks us back to the 1940s, where John Morley is about to take on his final case. Reveling in the gritty noir atmosphere of its era, the game echoes a lot of the same feel that games like Call of Cthulhu have managed to conjure in the past. Here we pick up with Morley back at the hospital, recovering from his injuries sustained by his prolific last case. Now on the mend, Morley is visited by Lady Margaret Fordside, an English countess, who has a big job for Morley to conduct. From here, the game then whisks us over to the main case, where you explore a creepy mansion, a derelict asylum, and even a destroyed greenhouse, to name but a few locales, all in a bid to discover the truth about a gruesome murder. I won't spoil too much about the story, but there's a nice little twist toward the end and some good clues nestled in along the way that give some hints over what's happening before that final reveal. Despite its linear perspective, The Last Case of John Morley is surprisingly eerie in spots. Exploring in a first-person perspective, the areas are quite disturbing and unnerving, which feeds into the sound design too. There are a couple of light jump scares here, which actually caught me off guard, helping to ratchet up the tension. The controls are simple enough and largely revolve around an action button to explore and pick up items, along with simplistic directional movement to traverse the areas. However, the decision to map the sprint down to holding the left analog stick is an odd one, especially when that same control is mapped to holding down L1 as well. The bulk of the game sees you wandering around various locations that don't have too many interactable elements, following clues to key rooms where light puzzles block progress from time to time. However, the bulk of this game plays out like an interactive visual novel. There are glowing green flashback sequences, key clues that help flesh out the case, along with character profiles, but most of these are unmissable because of the nature of the game. The character models are a bit janky, and lip-syncing doesn't match either. This is a bit of a problem because dialogue is completely unskippable. The early parts of the game are particularly rough for this, given the expository dialogue and the various bits of the case being unveiled. This does get better late on, but these glowing green flashback sequences are rough and require you to basically find a different item around room to progress the scene forward. Personally, I would have liked a bit more interactivity here, but The Last Case of John Morley is very rigid in its design. None of this is helped by the voice acting, which is a bit of a mixed bag overall. The nurse you encounter at the beginning of the game is notably one of the worst, too, while other voice actresses are okay, especially that of Elodie in Dr. Mulder. The Last Case of John Morley just doesn't have much meat on the bone. It's not a bad game, especially if you're after a no-frills, easygoing mystery you can switch your brain off to, but it never really steps beyond the basics. There's no combat, no meaningful detective systems, and nothing that pushes the genre forward. Beyond a handful of light puzzles, most of your time here will be spent walking from room to room, poking at objects, and advancing the story until the next scene triggers. Visually, it at least nails that noir-soaked 1940s atmosphere, and there's clear ambition in the art direction. The overall package, though, is thin, and you're often left wishing for more actual investigative work instead of the interactive movie format it slips into. Familiar fun with a few new tricks. When NeverAwake dropped back in 2022, it brought a simple but enjoyable premise to life with its twin-stitch shooter. The game was incredibly Moorish, blending a unique world with memorable boss fights and enough gameplay variety to keep you coming back for more. Fast forward 3 years, and NeverAwake is back with a surprise sequel in NeverAwake Flashback. Instead of sticking to the same mechanics and doubling down, though, the game has been completely reimagined into a roguelite shooter. In essence, the game is largely the same as it was back in 2022, sticking closely to the twin-stick bullet hell mayhem from before. This time, though, instead of buying new weapons and upgrades, stages offer randomized power-ups and weapons. This encourages multiple runs, while still adopting the same core premise of blasting through enemies and collecting souls. The levels are advertised as randomized, but some of them are definitely ripped right from the original game. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but boss fights and a couple of the harder stages are largely unchanged, so veterans with the original will instantly recognize these while blasting through the experience. The new roguelite approach also ensures that there's enough variety across each 15 to 20-minute run. This is very much a sequel you can pick up and play, or continue to hammer in the hunt for a top score and bigger multipliers. Instead of linear stages and difficulties this time around, NeverAwake Flashback throws you through 9 different levels until a big boss fight at the end. The title also boasts 7 different endings and multiple difficulty levels too. Some of these endings are quite straightforward to unlock, encouraging players to beat the final boss across multiple difficulties, but others have more unique requirements, which I won't spoil here. The controls remain largely unchanged from the first game. You use the analog sticks to aim and shoot, a dash button to slip past incoming projectiles, and another to trigger your power-ups. These power-ups appear between stages as 2 randomly assigned options, each paired with a stage-specific buff, things like reduced difficulty, boosted defense stats, and so on. It's a simple tweak to the first game's more rigid stage-based structure, but it suits this design really well. You're also no longer alone. Gabe-chan accompanies you through the nightmares, offering support as you push deeper into each stage. That's just as well because you'll run into several returning foes along the way, including the tablet, the schoolgirl bully, and the vegetable monster, to name a few. Each stage still has a fixed route, but completion once again hinges on collecting souls rather than simply surviving to the end. As in the first game, that means some stages can wrap up earlier than intended, although if you do reach the finish line, the loop mechanic kicks in. Each loop ramps up enemy difficulty, usually by flooding the screen with even more projectiles and extra health. Choosing weapons and accessories to craft unique builds remains one of the game's big hooks, but your mileage with this sequel will definitely vary. Players who loved NeverAwake and cleared everything the first time around will find Flashback a pleasant return, but not a particularly bold one. The added story beats are welcome, and the final boss is solid, but beyond that, Flashback doesn't offer quite enough to feel like anything more than a highly enjoyable, if wholly familiar, extension of the original.